Hello divas and divos, welcome to Roller Diva Dance Fit. I go by the name of Lady Godiva. I am a fitness coach, skating enthusiast, and a clinical psychologist. And today I want to talk to you about an issue of real psychological importance in the skating community. Is the skating community racially divided? Okay, we're going to talk about this right now. Cue the music. Okay, so let's get into this discussion. Before we get into the meat of this, I want you to like this video. I want you to subscribe so we can keep having these thought-provoking conversations, okay? Sounds good. Let me start by answering that question, because it's not often that a question can be definitively answered, but it can today. That question, is the skating community racially divided? The answer is yes, okay? Yes, of course it's racially divided because America right now is racially divided, okay? Now, roller skating is a cultural institution in America, and even more so in the past year, given the whole lockdown with COVID. Everyone's been scrambling to find an activity. Skating has been it for so many people. And it's also come at a time when there's been just a crap ton of social unrest. So for most of America, this was incredibly saddening. And for people like myself, people of color, it was saddening, but unfortunately, it wasn't very surprising. We all know that skating has a very racialized history, from segregated roller rinks to situations where people couldn't just skate in a public forum if they were African American. So if you want more on that, I really suggest that you go to the documentary United Skates. I believe it's on HBO. Or you can go to the documentary on Hulu. That one's called Roller Dreams. And honestly, I think those two documentaries, it should be required watching for anyone who puts 8 wheels on their feet, just to kind of know the background. So we really do have to acknowledge that. But what I really want to discuss with you today is the idea that, yeah, we're not going to be able to stop racism in society. But I think that there are things that we can do individually to really push the unity in the skating community and in America forward. Again, it's not going to fix it, but it's going to help to bring us together just a bit more. So I am coming to you with 5 tips that you want to be mindful of to allow yourself to be a person that promotes diversity, that promotes caring for people in disenfranchised groups just a little bit more. Sounds good? How could it not sound good, right? So let's keep this moving. Okay, so tip number 1 is we as individuals want to acknowledge that we can get it wrong. And everybody gets it wrong sometimes. And if you are watching this and you're saying, no, I don't get it wrong. I do the right thing all the time. I'm so mindful of every group, every demographic that's not my own. I'm sensitive to people 100% of the time. Then you are the problem, right? We are not perfect human beings. So we want to be able to acknowledge our own moments of prejudice. And when I talk about our own moments of prejudice, I'm talking about maybe moments where we've been overtly prejudiced and moments where maybe we've been inadvertently prejudiced, okay? Another thing, when I use the word prejudice, this is not a black-white issue exclusively. When we talk about division in the skating community, I'm talking about any group that feels marginalized. I'm talking about my LGBT brethren. I'm talking about disabled brethren. I'm talking about my BIPOC brethren. I'm talking about immigrants. I'm talking about people of all body weights, sizes, shapes, everything. And the list goes on. But I'm talking about groups that are underrepresented. We want to acknowledge that somewhere in the history of being ourselves, We may have said or done or not said or done things that have hurt those communities, okay? So the more we're willing to accept that we have flaws, the more we're gonna be willing to catch ourselves and do better, okay? So look at yourself. None of us are exempt from that. It's uncomfortable, right? But we need to start getting comfortable with looking at ourselves and having these uncomfortable conversations. Great. So, whereas tip 1 is looking inward and acknowledging where you might not be perfect, tip 2 is about allowing other people to learn from their short-sightedness. So, if you might make mistakes, please understand that other people are going to make mistakes as well. Other people might offend you. Other people might say something that maybe is a little bit insensitive to others. And that is not okay. But part of it is the only way those people can get better is if they, 1, understand why the issue may hurt you or others, and feel supported in being able to make a change. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't dirtbags out there who just don't want to change and just have negative thoughts and are prejudiced and bigoted. That absolutely occurs. But if somebody is actually at least stating that they want to learn and they want to grow as a human being, it is up to us to not get in their way toward that self-improvement, okay? Allow people the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. Tip number 3, and this kind of piggybacks tip number 2, but tip number 3 is try not to be derogatory or negatively label somebody who has made a mistake. What we want is to truly be understood, and for our experiences as people of marginalized groups to be acknowledged, validated, and for there to be some sort of change, we need allies, right? We don't want to burn any bridges. We want to be able to strengthen and fortify those bridges. You want to be able to have an issue with an action or behavior that a person exhibits without being derogatory toward the actual person. Target the behavior or lack thereof, not the person. It's a fine line there, but it's really, really critical. Tip 4. If I want to see a change for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, for instance, then we as a group probably need allies, meaning people outside of that group who are going to acknowledge that this is a worthy cause, that this is something that really does need to change in society. So allyship is important. But here's the thing. I guarantee you, no matter who you are on the outside of a marginalized group, right? Which means that you can't be part of every marginalized group at once, okay? So a great thing to do in this instance is learn how to be an ally for people outside of your demographic group, okay? So if you are a Black skater, then find ways to support maybe your Asian skaters, or maybe your transgender skaters, right? The list goes on. Just think about a demographic group that you're not a part of and commit to being an ally. So we all have to help each other out, okay? Does that make sense? Of course it does. Of course it does. And tip number 5, put your money where your mouth is, okay? So I think a lot of the time when there's social unrest that's just prevalent, it's all around us, we can get for that moment really jazzed up, right? For example, Black Lives Matter, right? You may get really excited about that and say, I'm gonna buy the t-shirt, I'm gonna wave the banner, great. But part of the thing that we all want to acknowledge is that that's a great show of support, but it is just a bunch of words, right? Black Lives Matter, BLM, they're just letters. You want to say, well, how do you put the idea, the importance behind needing a term like Black Lives Matter, how do you put it into action? How do you do things in your life that can promote the idea that Black Lives Matter? Okay. okay? And this doesn't need to be huge, right? You don't need to show up at every rally. You don't need to, you can, by all means. You don't need to do the most, but it may be as simple as inviting people that you're around, people of color, to share what their experiences are with you, okay? So all of that is you putting a concept that you recognize is important into action. We don't want something that looks catchy on a t-shirt. We want something that's going to make an impact in our everyday lives and therefore the lives of others. So that's about it. There are so many more things that you can do, that we can do as a society to bring us together. So please, by all means, if you want to share some of those things, please add it into the comments below. We need that in order to really have a community that is just bringing forth ideas and really focus on unifying each other as opposed to canceling each other, tearing each other down, or just sticking our heads in the sand and not paying attention to how important these issues are. And if you feel like you are part of a group that is underrepresented, shout that out below as well so that the whole community can give you some love. And it's important to remember that these wheels we wear, they have the power to bring us together, okay? So let's roll toward each other and not away. So with that, I'm out. Like and subscribe, and I will see you at another time. Bye, guys.